Apply general guidelines for budgets. Budgets are important, right? We all know that finances make up a very important part of our life. And so being able to have some general guidelines for your budget could be very helpful. So let's talk through these. First, set a financial goal. Now, this goal could be some large purchase, like I want to buy a new car in 5 years. Could be retirement, right? I'm 40. In 25 years, I want to retire and have X amount of dollars. Maybe you want to pay off debt, whether it's a student loan or a house or a car or a boat or a fishing cabin, whatever. But set the financial goal. Now, those were all really big examples. You could also have smaller examples, which could be, I really want to redecorate my bedroom with just new sheets and new, it's going to cost me $900, which is definitely not small, but it's not as, big as retirement or buying a house. So you can set all types of financial goals. Just be specific about what you want to do. And then we need to create a realistic plan. So no matter what your goal is, whether it's, redecorating your house or paying off your car or buying a new house in a different city, you want to play the long game. None of these big things are going to happen overnight. So we've got to play the long game, and we need to kind of break it up and say, okay, if I want to buy a house in Florida in 6 years, well, what are the things that I can do in the meantime? What are my short-term goals that are going to lead me on the path to my long-term goal? Because that is the important piece, right? Having those stepping stones. And you can't let small setbacks derail you. We are all going to have a spot where you end up at the car dealership and it costs you $350 to get your car fixed when you didn't plan on that. Well, that's a little bit of a setback, but you can't say, well, I just paid $350 for my car. That means I'm never going to have a house in Florida. That's not what that means. That means maybe we need to adjust the timeline. Maybe we need to adjust the goal, but don't be derailed. Just think through, what can I do to adjust based on what is happening in my life? Number 3, now we're going to get into our income and expenses. I'm a huge fan of a spreadsheet, whether you're using Excel or a Google Sheet or numbers. It doesn't matter, but spreadsheets are very, very nice for this. So when you category your income and your expenses, a lot of people maybe only have 1 or 2 sources of income. Maybe you have 3 or 4, but you have a fairly small number of income sources. Whereas expenses, I could just sit here for an hour and talk about all the expenses that I pay in a month, right? Between groceries and the electricity and gas for your house, gas for your car. You got to buy, new water bottles periodically. We got all kinds of things, pet food, vet bills. Expenses, they're everywhere. Now, because expenses are so vast, grouping them together can make things easier. So if I would say groceries, now I go to the grocery store multiple times a week usually. If I would list every one of those, that could be a lot. So maybe I say, okay, groceries are one piece, and maybe I estimate, right? Yeah, $800 a month in groceries. I'm not kidding. I feed a lot of people. Anyway, so, grouping them together makes it easier. And then we can think about if we need to, right? Because you think about income and expenses, you can't spend more than you have, generally speaking. And if we do, we need to figure out how to balance that. And if you're trying to save for a future thing, right? If you're setting a financial goal, then we need to have more income than expenses so we can save. So if we're looking at our budget and we're comparing our income and expenses, maybe we need to say, how can I reduce some of these expenses? Maybe the heat needs to get knocked down from 69 to 67, and 65 at night, put on an extra blanket while you're sleeping. Who knows? Does that make a difference? I don't know. I always keep my house cold, so I don't really know. Maybe we buy off-brand toilet paper for a few months. I don't know, but how can we reduce the expenses as they are needed? Okay. Now, after you do that, then we want to actually track the actual income and expenses. Because here's the thing, I estimate that I spend about $200 a week in groceries. right? That's total. That's every grocery trip I make throughout the week adds up to about 200. However, when I went to the grocery yesterday, I spent $237. That is over my estimated weekly allowance. And that was one trip. So you want to have at least 1 month, preferably multiple, where you actually write down everything that comes in, right? All of your income and everything that goes out, all of your your expenses. And then check it out. How were your anticipated, right? Our categorized expenses? How were the actual and the expected different? And why are they different? So we might, you might think you're only spending, $100 a month on online shopping. And then when you actually track it, you spent $350. Whoo, that's where my money's going. Or maybe you're like, I only spend $50 a month in gas for my car. And then you actually track it and you're like, oh, but it cost me $38 at one time to fill up, and I fill up 3 times a month, right? Sometimes our estimates are just not accurate. So it's important to check those out, analyze why, and then adjust the budget as needed. Do I need to cut back on things, or do I just need to save less? What is happening in life and how can I adjust with it? So basically our goal is always to have more income than expenses. That allows us to save for future things. There are going to be changes in life, right? Some months you have extra, some months you straight up don't. That's life. And it's important to note those. How do they impact your budget? And then change things. There's nothing wrong with adjusting your budget. We know that every month is going to be different. Life is not static, right? We have to just keep saying, okay, I can adjust, I move. Let your budget be a little bit flexible, knowing that the main goal is to have more income than expenses and to be able to save for that long-term financial goal.